Today's topic will be about environment. So specifically people, culture, beliefs, and place, how it affects our physical health, mental health, our ability to make progress, and our ability to stay healthy. Because more often than not, well, especially frequently, we have all these studies coming out. I just saw one yesterday how kids are really suffering because of what lockdown did to them mentally. And you're like, yes, there were a lot of things that should have never come to life. But yeah, let's open up about what influence environment has on our body, physically, mentally. Is there something that is optimal? Is there something that we can change? Is it different between cultures as such? You know, I come from far north in Europe, and I know I think and act and respond to things completely different than say somebody in California, and so on and so forth. So what's happening there? Is there something that we need to really actually focus on it, or is there something that can be just thrown out as we see in fitness industry? Hey, just calories in and calories out, when we know, you know what, it might be a little bit more complex than just that. So do you want to open up on the influence of environment on our body?
Yeah. So to keep things from the right perspective, we are talking kind of from the last episode we did as far as a sedentary individual moving to make physical and mental change to their thinking and to their body, right? So in that context, right, you have to understand that their starting point is sedentaryism, right? Like they're probably overweight or at least over fat, right? Like they have more body fat than they should be carrying around, and they're sedentary in nature, right? Even though they might obviously go to work every day, doesn't mean they do much. Okay.
And I would probably extend that it doesn't necessarily mean they are carrying a lot of body weight or something, but they are just not healthy.
Correct. Right. From any different level of perspectives, but like I mentioned, the body fat, right? Way more body fat than needed. They obviously have lots of visceral fat. We know that that's not healthy, et cetera, things like that. But it could also be like, hey, I kind of look normal, but I feel terrible, right? Like that, there's that situation too, right? Like, hey,
and we've seen it on blood tests from our own clients where they look in a good shape, but then they come back like, this guy needs to go on insulin. Because
and they say it, right? Like, hey, I don't know what's going on. I can't think very well. I can't perform very well. I have really low energy. I have a lot of brain fog. Like things just don't add up, right? And so that to play big roles, right? And so right away, most would think, okay, well, first thing, you know, if they're a sedentary individual, they start hanging out with friends that are sedentary. They should start going to, you know, gyms that push them, that actually challenge them. And that's the thing, is like, it's probably the base level change is probably something even less known, which is the actual place you live, the actual environmental pollution that you're exposed to. And I'll need to kind of detail that a little bit, because most people, when they think of pollution, they think of smog, they think of, you know, stuff in the air that you can see, right? And that's the obvious one, right? Like, because you can see it. But there is also things called electromagnetic field pollution, right? If you live anywhere where there's a lot of power lines, a lot of cell phone towers, those electromagnetic fields act just like pollution. In other words, they disperse other electromagnetic fields, like sunlight, like your ability for your brain to tune into the Earth's electromagnetic field when you sleep, right? They start to disturb baseline level mitochondrial dysfunction. And the easiest way to kind of understand this is astronauts, right? Astronauts go up into space where they are exposed to all electromagnetic fields all the time, and none of the native electromagnetic fields on the planet. This is known and studied, and in fact, NASA just came out with a publication where they literally say, hey, every single problem that we run into as astronauts ties back to mitochondrial dysfunction. Mm-hmm. But if you think about it, they control their eating, they exercise regimentedly, they are the epitome of trying to do everything that fitness people tell you to do correctly, right? Get the right
Yeah, you
amount of
need to be
exercise.
extremely fit to even get there.
Yeah, exactly. Like, but they're the cream of the crop already, right? They are already extreme on the planet, right? When they're training before they go up, they are the most fit people on the planet. They are like Iron Man people when it comes to fitness. They are like SEALs when it comes to mental preparedness, right? They are the epitome of the best humanity can offer, right? Intentionally, right? They put them up into space, they all fall apart, right? They all fall apart.
Yeah.
NASA's at, right? And the reason why they all fall apart is because of what I just stated. Electromagnetic fields, just because you can't see them, affect baseline level physiology. And with long enough time of always consistently having that disrupted, you end up with things that they get the same things that we're getting here, just so people understand. In this publication, they get bone loss, right? Everybody attributes it to gravity, but they've kind of solved that with flywheel machines and special equipment and stuff like that. They are loading their bones, right? But it's not that, right? How long can you load your bones through exercise? 1 hour at the most. If you're an animal, maybe 2, right? What's happening for the another 22 hours of the day? Your bones are not loaded. The electromagnetic field pulses are not happening. Other things that they get is literal metabolic derangement. They start to have problems with cognitive thinking. They start having problems with completing tasks that require very complex thinking. And that's like they can detect that immediately because these are high performing people, right? And they have to complete tasks that are very complex. They also start to notice things like diabetic type situations with some, like not the insulin control starts to get dysregulated. Not saying that they turn into diabetics. I'm saying they start to clearly see the signs that, hey, if this person stays up there for another year, they will become insulin resistance type 2 diabetic. They start to see those types of changes. They already know this, right? And in the paper, they flat out, tie all the different problems here. Here's all the different problems that we run into when being in space. They all come back to your mitochondria does not understand what's going on. And so circadian rhythm processes, right? That's not going to sleep and waking up. Just so to reiterate, circadian rhythm means the timing of when cells do certain tasks, right? That's every cell in your body, right? So it starts to lose timing. It's essentially like a clock that no longer is ticking at the right pace, and it gets more and more out of whack. And those have to do with electromagnetic fields. So this is one of the key things that I personally kind of specialize and bring to the table as a unique perspective, especially with people that have problems, right? Like they just, hey, I've gone to the doctor, they don't know what's going on. Or I've gone to the doctor and every time I go, I get a new medication, but I still can't lose weight and I still can't think straight and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The first thing that I do is take a step back and evaluate their environment at the core level. Hey, what's your address? How many cell phone towers are around you? Are there power lines? Things of that nature. More than once, several times, I have had people reach out clearly displaying some of these problems from ferreting it out from their questionnaire and from their blood work. The first thing I ask them to do is, hey, take a walk around the block. Tell me about any of these things that you see. Sure enough, they live next to something like this, right? And then, then it's one of those things where, hey, you need to get some of this stuff measured. Some of it can be mitigated, not externally, just so people don't get the wrong idea. If it's an external stressor, like a cell phone tower or a power line or a substation or a hospital or anything that's putting off a lot of electromagnetic fields exterior to your house, don't spend, because there are companies out there that will tell you that they can paint your house a certain color with certain special paint or put up a Faraday cage around it. You will spend hundreds of thousands of dollars and not accomplish anything. I'm just telling everybody that those types of mitigation things do not work. So if it's an
What
external
are the
thing,
most common, like, pollution driven things that can affect your health negatively that you see most often? And which ones are the most harmful that people can look out to and assess themselves? Maybe just go outside and walk around. Hey, this tower wasn't here before. And then maybe some
those are the obvious ones, right? Cell phone towers are the obvious ones. They have to be fairly close to your house. They have to be within 200 meters of your house for it to actively be really affecting you. But again, they can pop up anywhere, right? They might not be there this month. 2 months later, it's like, holy crap, they just put up a cell phone tower. that's something to be looking out for, right? Other things, I feel like power lines, high powered power lines and substations are way more dangerous, because they actually put out a much bigger aggressive electromagnetic field. Now, at the same time, they're kind of rare to have them right next to your house, because they're not a cell phone tower that's putting out the radiation. They are just running a lot of power. But a really high powered power line will put out an electromagnetic field of about 400 yards, right? So if you're so that would be like 500 meters, right? So if you're within 500 meters of a substation or a high powered power line, yeah, you might be affected by that electromagnetic field, and those tend to cause really severe problems. Like they have been linked in the past to leukemias and things of that nature, like blood cancers and stuff like that,
So
because
is
they
that
are very.
something that people can pick up in a blood test as well from different?
You'll start seeing it. Yeah, there are early signs. One of them, and I know that I mentioned this blood test, is your omega-3 index, right? Your omega-3 index starts to get destroyed when you are around a powerful electromagnetic field. We have a whole episode on how DHA is being recycled just at the eye, right? But the eye is the most sensitive. The eye is the one that's going to take up most of your DHA needs. And so, but the video that we talked about in there, we talk about how, hey, blue light and electromagnetic fields touching or interacting with your eye demands a higher amount of DHA. But that also happens at every other tissue, right? And so when you're next to a really powerful electromagnetic field, what you will see is their omega-3 index plummets. It goes rock bottom, and no matter how much omega-3s they take in a pill form, or even with actual food, they have to almost live off of that food for their omega-3 index to move up. That's not normal. For a normal person not being affected by electromagnetic fields, if you ate salmon, for example, 6 ounces of salmon 3 or 4 times a week, right? That's only 4 meals for the whole week. Your omega-3, if you do that consistently, your omega-3 index will be at an acceptable level. It'll be around an 8% or 9%. But these people, they can eat salmon twice a day for weeks on end, a couple months, and their omega-3 index will still be like a 3 or a 4, which is not acceptable. And so that's an early indicator. Right? Because people will go,
Are
well,
there
what does
any
that have to?
cities, or maybe is there any areas that you would see this more often than not? You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
up north or down south or east, west? Are there any?
Well, it happens
What
everywhere
in
because
US?
yeah,
Have you
yeah.
recognized in US that there is a pattern that some areas are a bit more prone to causing these type of issues of burning down your omega-3s than others?
Yeah, in general, any big city has the potential to cause this, right? Cities that kind of jump to the top of the line, or any cities that are already operating on 5G networks, right? Because they have to put those towers everywhere, like really close together. Also, they have to run fiber. Some run fiber all around the city to go into the city, and that's 5G. Like a city that does that is Memphis, Tennessee. So they were actually one of the first 5G uh, uh, fiber lines that got put in the US. That's, in my opinion, that's why the Tennessee Titans have so many tendon and ligament injuries that seem to come out of nowhere, is because they all live and train in that city. And then, so that's like, that one stands out. It's like one of the worst. Another completely 5G city is Austin, Texas. That one tends to, unless you live on the outskirts, you tend to have a lot of electromagnetic field stuff. Salt Lake City, for example, it has kind of all of that stuff, but it also has a military base in that valley, and it's a valley, so there's a lot of inversion. So that one's actually probably one of the worst. Not really joking, because of the inversion that happens there. Like in the winter, not only are you exposed to all these electromagnetic fields, but because of the inversion, because it's a valley, it even directly blocks the sunlight getting it down into the people, to a very, very great degree. That's just the reality of the situation in that place. Other places, obviously, really high population, New York, LA, things of that nature. down south, as far as like Southern California, at the border, right? If you live near San Diego, things of that nature, there are communication companies down there, right? Communication companies are experimenting with the latest and greatest communication all the time, plus the military bases down there and that type of stuff. So though, if you live in those places, you will find you deal with weird things, right? That don't seem to make sense. And that's one of the main things, right? Like that is one of the main things that you have to be looking for. Luckily, like testing it is getting more and more available. Like you can just Google that type of stuff. More environmentally testing agencies are not the EPA, not the environmental regulation. They don't care. They're not doing anything about it. We're talking private companies that test for environmental pollutants. They are now offering electromagnetic field testing and stuff. So it's getting more easy to test your home and your environment from this perspective, along with the normal pollutants, right? Like air quality and radon and things of that nature. But those play a huge role in modern day living, as far as like letting you accomplish the goal, right? Because I don't care, like we stated with the astronauts, you can be the most regimented, dedicated, disciplined person with eating and training and do it correctly and still have problems if your local environment, we'll just call it from a pollution perspective, and pollution means everything: electromagnetic fields, air quality, sun quality, water quality. From that perspective, if that's off, you're not going anywhere. You're only going to get
You'd be
worse.
confident enough to say, you know what, this is why like Russians who live in bloody Siberia are so resilient to everything, because they are just brought up in middle of nowhere and they're eating just homegrown stuff, and there is no environmental pollution that kind of hinders their ability to reach their full potential physically.
Yeah, I agree. The more remote you grow up, the better. The more remote you grow up, the better. Now, having said that, in the same breath, does this make them bulletproof? No, it does not, because those are the people that are getting sent up into space. Do you see what I mean? Right. When you go and look into the background of every astronaut that's gone up into space, they are a farm boy that grew up in a rural place that had really good remote upbringing, lots of physical labor, lots of mental stimulation, good schooling, et cetera, et cetera. That's why they became that elite person to begin with.
So they
But the
have a
moment you
great
put them in that,
baseline, but when you expose them to all this, they are not bulletproof. They're still going to suffer exactly like everyone else.
correct? Yes, because you're messing with a baseline physiological problem, right? But to your point, yes, that is exactly what's going on. The more remote you live, the more, especially in your younger years, anywhere from when you were born all the way up until you fully develop around 16 to 18, like or more, but crucial in those years of development. Yeah, if you grow up somewhere remote, you will be, most people will call you genetically gifted. Most people will call you, hey, you have some kind of a quirk that makes you special, et cetera, et cetera. No, you just properly developed all of your mitochondrial circuitry to react to environmental stimulus that grows you instead of breaks you down, right? You
So let me
grew
take
up in
this route. If somebody is living always in these pollution-driven places, how much can they improve their health by just taking themselves out from these places for a couple of weeks, 2-3 times a year? Will that be enough to regain their health?
it depends on the place they go.
Right.
But to answer the question, can it be done? Absolutely. Absolutely. And you
Not
can see,
everyone can go like, you know what, I'm packing my bags, I'm going to go there because I want to feel great. But
yeah, forever, right? Like just move to wherever you feel great. That's the obvious solution, right? That's the obvious solution. Maybe not practical definitely not practical for everybody, but maybe practical for some. And that is what I would call getting an A on the test, right? If you can say, hey, with confidence, I can move wherever needs to be moved, don't settle for anything less. I'll tell you that right now, right? If you have the means to go through these testings and figure out that your environment is no good, and you can find another environment that's really good, and you don't have anything that's stopping you other than creature habits, right? Let's put it that way, right? Like your local friends, your local hangouts, those types of things. And those are the only things stopping you from moving to a better place. Don't settle for less. You will, like, living in a really good environment is significantly underestimated by people. You will accomplish more than you can think of, not just from a physical perspective, not just from a mental perspective, from a total productivity perspective. You will start to think differently because you're not being affected by electromagnetic fields. Because another, your brain has one of the most amounts of mitochondria on your body. Secondly, your lungs, not your lungs, your heart, and then your intestines, right? So if you want to protect those organs, which are crucial for thinking well, for being productive well, for all of these things, being in a healthy place is top priority, number one, above every single thing. So now, what, to answer your question directly, as far as like, okay, I can't move, right? I can't move. I financially can't really swing that, but I'm not necessarily strapped for cash, and I can, go somewhere for a few weeks here and there, 2 or 3 times a week, two or three times a year. Sorry. Then yeah, the answer is yes. The answer is you can absolutely do that. You have to, but if you're going to do that, you need to maximize where you're going to go. In other words, go somewhere that has incredible amounts of UV yield. In other words, high sunlight, incredibly high sunlight, and incredibly low population. That combination, and to boot, if it can be next to an ocean, that would be like paradise, right? Think paradise, right? Think paradise. You can go somewhere like that for, say, 3 weeks out of the year, and then you got to have a strategy, right? The strategy is do it when your local environment is the worst, right? So let's just kind of take, and for the most part, most people that we're going to be talking to live north of the 30th latitude, right? So that means you have 4 seasons. So that means that this time away from your bad environment should be placed between the months of October and March, because those are the times of the year where you're going to get the least amount of sunlight and the most amount of the electromagnetic field exposure. So those are the times of the year where you would want to be somewhere else, right? So you would time these vacation getaways. And I wouldn't settle for anything less than 1 week, right? So if you can only afford 1 week, go for 1 week. But going to a high solar environment, let's just hypothetically say the Yucatan, right? The Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. It's a great destination for vacation places and stuff like that. I wouldn't book, I mean, do what you can, right? Like an all-inclusive hotel, that's fairly cheap for most people. That's very doable, but you'll have to spend most of your time not in the hotel. You'll have to spend it out on the beach.
And this is the next thing what I wanted to bring up, like, okay, environment, about where you live and whatnot is great, but if you're going to all inclusive and just spend every single day sitting there boozing, it's not going to help you in anything. So how important is the cultures that you live in, and how detrimental can be culture where you live in as well? So, because I believe it was Albert Einstein who said, you can't solve problem with the mindset that created it. You need to go out, reach out, get different perspective to create a solution. So
absolutely,
everything is played out. How important is to have a human input on you that can help you excel physically and mentally?
Extremely. So secondary to the environment, right? The things that we just talked about that could circumvent everything. The next level up from that is literally the people you talk to, the people that you share ideas with and lifestyles with, right? Like the first people that are obviously going to come to mind is your significant other, the people that you live with acutely, right? If they're not on board, and fitness people are really good about talking about this, right? Like if your spouse is not on board with your diet's not going to be successful, right? Like it's just that simple. If your friends are not on board with you working out, those aren't going to be your friends for very long if you stay dedicated to working out. So yeah, that's number 2 on the list, right? The environment of the human social interaction of what you're trying to accomplish. If you are coming from a sedentary place, then what you start doing is you start friends shopping. You start, when you go to the gym, you start looking for people that are almost in the same boat as you, ideally someone that's slightly ahead of you, right? You can tell, hey, they're not necessarily quite as fit as me, but they look like they're doing. Go talk to them, right? Like, hey, I'm just getting started, blah, 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 blah. Like, I get it, right? There's the whole insecurity thing, but trust me, everybody in the gym is insecure. That's just the reality of the situation. Everybody in the gym is insecure. If you see somebody who's super fit and super, jacked and working out well, trust me, they started from an insecure place. They might still be insecure, right? That's just how it is. When you go and ask them for advice or start talking to them, be respectful, gym etiquette type of stuff, right? Like, don't go talk to them right when they're working out, etc. But be mindful of, hey, I see this guy pretty regularly. Maybe I should talk to him, right? And then you start forming a new group of friends that will actually challenge you to continue to do the things that you're doing and support you, right? Like, especially if there's somebody that you see regularly. Secondarily, right, there's online communities. That's a big thing, right? Like, if you find the right online community, yeah, you're going to get more motivation, etc. And then going back to kind of what I was saying, as far as like, if you end up going to different places, right, for health reasons, then you probably don't want to pick the exact location where sedentary boozing people are going to be, right? You might want to book Airbnb that's slightly away from the popular drinking, frat party areas. And with the advent of internet, right? Like, internet's not bad, technology's not bad. You can literally just Google where you're going, see if there are any Facebook groups or social media groups of people that actively go there for health reasons. You will find that this is a more common thing than you think. And more than often, these people have their own little private communities where they're like, oh yeah, if you're going to be in, Playa del Carmen, go out here on the outskirts. There's some Airbnbs that are out there. We actually get together for a farmer's market once a week, etc. And you start meeting these people that are living this other lifestyle of, hey, we kind of avoid the main populated areas. We kind of run our own thing. We go out and hang out in nature like that. Those are real things. And if you are doing a getaway 2 or 3 times a year to get away from your bad environment to a good environment, it's worth finding those groups of people because they have done all the things, right? Hey, how do you get the right food? How do you get the right stuff while you're there, right? It's really easy to just show up at an all-inclusive because you don't have to think about anything. But at the same time, that if you're going there for health reasons, you probably don't want to spend all your time at the pool, at the all-inclusive with all the Wi-Fi blasting you so that you can sit there on your phone. You see what I mean? Like, you're almost undoing some of the effect. Now, don't get me wrong, just by the sunlight being that much more strong there, you are going to get benefit even if you did that, right? So if the only affordable solution for you is to go with an all-inclusive, do it, but then go out of your way to explore and go out on the beach quite a bit and stay away. But it's because you know better, right? When you know better, you do better, right? Just like a thing that I like to say, and I take this from a neurosurgeon named Jack Cruz, you cannot get better in the environment that made you sick, period. No matter what a doctor tells you, they will never be able to give you any drug that actually fixes you. They'll manage the problem, right? They can give you drugs that will manage the problem. It's not the same thing, right?
Yeah, mask the issue pretty much, because we can take
Yeah, mask the issue, manage the
numbers
disease
on a blood panel, but it doesn't necessarily mean you are actually getting better.
No, it's they don't lie to you, right? I mean, I'll give them the benefit. They are not lying to you. They never say that they're going to cure you. They just say, oh, you have this problem. Here's this drug for that problem. They are not wrong in saying that. But what they don't tell you, but everybody that's the patient assumes is, oh, if I take this drug, I'll get better. No. Those are not the same. They are not the same. People need to think about that. They are going to give you a drug for the problem you have, which will acutely mask or fix or manage, right? Whatever word you want to use. But the word you cannot use is cure, right? It will not cure anything, right? And if you want to cure something, right, you got sick in this environment, you are technically have some kind of a disease, metabolic derangement, et cetera, type 2 diabetes, anxiety, whatever it might be. If it ties back to mitochondrial dysfunction and you've been living in this environment, you go to the doctor, they give you a drug, it's not going to fix it. It's only going to manage it. The only way you will fix the problem is by removing the environmental issue that's happening, right? When the astronauts go up in space, the only time they start getting better is then they come back from space. They cannot get better in space. Trust me, there's experiments showing, hey, this astronaut took these drugs to manage these problems, didn't help, right? Like, that's That's what I'm trying to get people to understand.
So this brings me to ask you another question about, so imagine somebody is living in some kind of cultural environment that they can't take themselves out. What do you do with those type of people? You know, like, well, let's say some kind of religion or whatever. Is there anything that they can do? You know, maybe read a book and I don't know. So do
No,
you
you
have
can just present, you can,
with somebody who has run into health related issues because of their personal beliefs? I can't eat this.
yeah,
I can't do that. I can't go to gym because I'm not fit. You name it. You know, just
yeah, and
get it in their
that's a
own
lot harder.
head.
Yeah, that just is exactly, I mean, this is a perfect video to kind of highlight that, right? Like it's one of those things where the reason that you might be experiencing the issues is almost certainly because you can't think well. You can't objectively think well. In
Right.
other words, you can't disassociate yourself from the situation and actually evaluate, oh, this is actually a problem. I should fix it. Instead, you go, no, that's a thing I can't do. And that's kind of where your line of thought kind of ends, right? And the only thing you can do is continue to present the actual factual information, just like I did here, which is not what doctors do, right? Doctors do not present factual information of, hey, here's a drug. There is also all of these other side effects that come with this drug. This drug will not cure you. It will only manage the symptoms. I don't actually know what's causing the problem. Again, this is a thing that they do not tell you. They never know. You know, if you show up and you're like, hey, I'm type 2 diabetic, they just assume, oh, you're eating too many carbohydrates. Exercise more,
Yeah.
reduce your carbohydrate intake. And then you tell them, well, you know, and I have clients that are like, I don't even eat carbs. I've known that I don't feel well for a long time. I don't
We
eat
have seen it
carbs.
many times and we have discussed it many times that if that you need to be careful if you do a blood test and the doctor or professional doesn't even talk to you before giving you a feedback. Most likely they are just doing a guesswork. Well, not most likely, it's 100% just guesswork. Uh, because they don't take you as an individual anymore. They just look at numbers.
Yeah, yeah, and they certainly are not asking you, hey, where do you live? Do you know, well, what is your environment? Why is this happening? There is no investigation. This is what I'm getting at. There is absolutely zero investigation from their end on why it would be doing, you know, what it's doing, right? Like, why is your body acting this way? So all of a sudden, right? Like, especially people that are like, all of a sudden, you know, 5 years ago, nothing, blood work perfect, blood work perfect. All of a sudden now I'm pre-diabetic and blah, blah, blah. Oh, it's just aging, right? You're just getting older. Yeah, but I'm 36. Why is that happening? Right? Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, things are not making sense. Doctors are ignoring the investigation issue, right? They are no longer the people you go to investigate your issue. They're the people you go to get a drug. Pretty much. That's how it works.
Yeah, and
And
now
if
we
you're
finish
okay,
with oh, take this peptide, take that peptide, and that's gonna sort it out. And you're like,
it's same thing, same
like
thing. It's the same thing.
putting a plaster on something and never really dealing
Yeah.
with. Stop
And again,
cutting
this
your
is coming.
fingers when you chop your veg. It's not gonna prevent it from happening.
No, it's not. But this is coming from people like, do I take drugs? Yes, absolutely. I take PEDs. I exploit them, right? But I will tell you, when I've gone through my personal ordeal with this exact scenario, the first thing I did is stop taking all drugs. Why? Because I want to actually know when I fix the problem. I don't want to mask it. Right now, I wasn't, you know, the moment you stop taking things, what am I fixing? The things that I've just talked about. Hey, what's my environment look like? I need to reassess that whole situation, you know, and if it's temporary, then I need to move away to see the change, right? Because that's the thing. When you finally get to the core problem, it doesn't take a long time to go, hey, I'm getting better. I can see that.
Sorry, you broke up a little bit. You said, "Hey, I'm getting better," and
Yeah. So, hey, you know, I'm getting better. Like if you design something like this, right? Like I've helped somebody recently, really bad health problems tied to electromagnetic fields, isn't going to get better in that environment, has kids, has a family, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, you know what? Take your family on a vacation. They're like, oh, well, he had really bad health problems. He had to cancel his family vacation. I'm like, great. put it back on the books. You're going to take your family on a vacation. He goes, okay. I'm like, but I'm going to tell you where to go. And he goes, okay. So I told him where to go, right? I investigate this stuff from a Google Earth perspective, right? Like I actively, go and investigate these things through internet as far as like, hey, let's look at satellite images of this place. Let's look at satellite images from that place, et cetera, et cetera. There's tools out there. There's tools out there to make a really good assessment of where can I go to see a change and see it fast, right? So I sent him to a place like that. 1 week later, he messaged me and goes, you were right. I felt 100% better. My problems started to get better in like 4 days of being there. And these were major health problems, right? These were problems that were leading him to think that he had some kind of cancer. His wife thought he might die, like really problematic stuff. Go on to a doctor. Doctors don't really know what to do other than give him more meds, right? And so, yeah, I just put him in the right conditions. He saw change that highlighted it for him. Oh, I see. This is a problem with where I live. Right now, he instead of wasting time and wasting money, he can now objectively put his resources in the right place to actually fix himself.
So let me give you a summary of what everything that we just talked about was. So that environment sounds like is extremely important, and not just physical environment, but also mental, like how you converse to people and all those kind of things. And in worst case scenario, make sure that you're aware of what is out there, not only in sense of what kind of people you're talking to, are they on the same path as you are, but also what kind of electromagnetic fields might be affecting your health, all those kind of things. And if you are stuck there, be proactive and research where you can go that is taking all these outside influences away, so you actually understand the difference, how much better you could feel. Because let's be honest, me and you have experienced that we work with somebody who has never felt good, like ever, and they don't even know that until they feel better.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very common thing. And if you know the root cause, you can get them feeling better. It doesn't mean you fixed anything. It means you've got them feeling better so that they can fundamentally understand the core problem, right? And that just has to happen sometimes. Again, this is just a thing that's going to happen more and more readily in modern cities, right? I'm just going to tell that to everybody. If you live in a city, be vigilant. Be vigilant of your environment. Don't ignore it.
Yeah. No, awesome, David. This has been a great video as usual. I appreciate your time, and I'll chat to you next time.
Awesome. Thank you.